The 1968 Queen's Birthday Honours were appointments to orders and decorations of the Commonwealth realms to reward and highlight citizens' good works, on the occasion of the official birthday of Queen Elizabeth II. They were announced in supplements to the London Gazette of 31 May 1968. At this time, honours for Australians were awarded both in the United Kingdom honours, on the advice of the premiers of Australian states, and also in a separate Australia honours list. Recipients of honours are displayed here as they were styled before the new honours. United Kingdom. Life Peer Baron Dr. Thomas Ballow, Fellow of Balliol College, Oxford, since 1945. Economic Advisor to the Cabinet Office, 1964–67. Sir William Rushton Black, Chairman, National Research Development Corporation. Lately Chairman, the Leyland Motor Corporation. Sir Geoffrey Crowther, Chairman, The Economist Newspaper Limited. Chairman, Trust Houses Group Limited. Professor William David Evans, Professor and Head of the Department of Geology, University of Nottingham. John Henry Shack, J.P., Chairman, Cooperative Union Limited. Privy Councillor Gerald William Reynolds, M.P., Member of Parliament for Islington North since 1958. Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Defence for the Army, 1964–65. Minister of Defence for the Army, 1965–1967. Minister of Defence since 1967. Goranwy Owen Roberts, M.P., Member of Parliament for Carnarvonshire, 1945–1950, and for the Carnarvon Division since 1950. Minister of State, Welsh Office, 1964–1966. Minister of State, Department of Education and Science, 1966–1967. Minister of State for Foreign Affairs since 1967. John Thomson Stonehouse, M.P., Member of Parliament for Wednesbury since 1957. Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Aviation, 1964–1966. Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for the Colonies, 1966–1967. Minister of Aviation, 1967. Minister of State, Ministry of Technology since 1967. Knight Bachelor Arthur Percival Hay Aitken, Deputy Chairman, Stone Plat Industries Limited. For services to export, Captain George Edward Barnard, Deputy Master, Trinity House. Thomas Blackburn, lately Chairman and Joint Managing Director, Beaverbrick Newspapers Limited. Matthew Busby, C.B.E., Manager, Manchester United Football Club. Professor Herbert Butterfield, Historian. Cornelius Cameron, C.B.E., D.L., Alderman, Nottingham City Council. William Derrick Capper, Chief Constable, Birmingham City Police. John Selby Clements, C.B.E., for services to drama. Carl Cyril Cohen, C.B.E., Councillor, Leeds City Council. Leonard Drucker, Chairman, Council of Engineering Institutions. John Norman Valet Duncan, O.B.E., Chairman and Chief Executive, Rio Tinto Zinc Corporation Limited. For services to export, Lawrence George Gale, C.B.O.B.E., Controller, Royal Ordnance Factories, Ministry of Defence. Frederick Evelyn Harmer, C.M.G., Deputy Chairman, the Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company. Charles Felix Harris, M.D., F.R.C.P. for services to the University of London. David Patrick Huddy, Managing Director, Aero Engine Division, Rolls-Royce Limited. For services to export, Raymond Winter Jennings, Q.C., Master of the Court of Protection, Supreme Court of Judicature. Henry Cecil Johnson, C.B.E., Chairman, British Railways Board. William Kirby Lane, J.P., Chairman, John Lane & Son Limited, Professor Emeritus Max Edgar Lucy and Milan, C.B.E. for services to archaeology. William Lawrence Mather, O.B.E.M.C. T.D., D.L., Chairman, Mather & Platt Limited, for services to export. Hubert Newton, lately President, International Union of Building Societies and Savings Associations. Jeffrey Stephen William Morgan, F.A., R.C.S., Professor of Anesthetics, University of London. Rudolf Ernst Pilz, C.B.E. Wykeham, Professor of Theoretical Physics, University of Oxford. Norman George Mollett Pritchard, J.P., Chairman, London Boroughs Association. John Renwick, J.P., President, The Law Society. Kenneth Robson, C.B.E. M.D., F.R.C.P., Registrar, Royal College of Physicians. Rupert Lee Sick, C.B., Registrar of Restrictive Trading Agreements. Ian Maxwell Stewart, lately Chairman, Fairfields Limited. Alan Grierson Walker, QC, Sheriff of Lanarkshire. Barnes Neville Wallace, C.B.E., Chief of Aeronautical Research and Development, British Aircraft Corporation Limited. Weybridge, Cyril Alfred Pitts, United Kingdom citizen, lately resident in India. Australian State of New South Wales John William Goodsall, C.M.G., Chairman, Public Service Board. The Honourable Gordon Wallace, President, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court of New South Wales. State of Victoria Councillor Arthur William Nicholson, O.B.E., J.P., Mayor of the City of Ballarat. State of Queensland Arthur Henry Petfield, for services to industrial development and to the community. State of Western Australia Cyril Pangborn Bird, for services to the community, particularly in the field of public accounting. Order of the Bath, Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the Bath General Sir Alan Jolly, K.C.B. C.B.E.D. S.O. late Royal Armoured Corps Colonel Commandant, Royal Tank Regiment. Sir William Armstrong, K.C.B.M. V.O. Joint Permanent Secretary to H.M. Treasury and Head of the Home Civil Service. Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath Vice Admiral Donald Cameron Ernest Forbes Gibson, C.B.D. S.C. Lieutenant General Robert George Victor Fitzgeorge Balfour, C.B. C.B.E.D. S.O. M.C. late Foot Guards. Lieutenant General Ian Henry Freeland, C.B.D. S.O. late Infantry, Deputy Colonel, the Royal Anglian Regiment. Acting Air Marshal Andrew Henry Humphrey, C.B.O. B.E.D. F.C.A. F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Vice Marshal Lewis MacDonald Hodges, C.B.C. B.E.D. S.O.D. F.C. Royal Air Force. Basil Charles Engholm, C.B. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. William Allen Neal, C.B. Permanent Under Secretary of State, Department of Economic Affairs. Companion of the Order of the Bath, Military Division Rear Admiral Joseph Bartosik, D.Sc. Rear Admiral George Clement Crowley, D.Sc. Rear Admiral George Hammond Evans. Rear Admiral William Allen Haynes. Rear Admiral John Edward Ludgate Martin, D.Sc. Surgeon Rear Admiral Stanley Miles. Rear Admiral William Terence Colborne Ridley, O.B.E. Rear Admiral Dennis Bryan Harvey Wildish. Major General John Humphrey Stephen Bering, O.B.E. M.C. late Corps of Royal Engineers, Colonel Gurkha Engineers. Major General Peter Edward Moore Bradley, C.B.E.D. S.O. late Royal Corps of Signals, Colonel Commandant, Royal Corps of Signals. Major General Charles Julius Deeds, O.B.E. M.C. late Infantry, Colonel the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry. Major General Raymond Cyril Alexander Edge, M.B.E. late Corps of Royal Engineers. Major General Ferg Allen Humphreyling, C.B.E.D. S.O. Late Infantry. Major General Ian Argyle Robertson, M.B.E. Late Infantry. Major General Philip Thomas Hower, D.S.O. M.B.E. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Air Vice Marshal Peter de Lacy Lieutenant, D.F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Vice Marshal Harold Brownlow Martin, D.S.O. D.F.C. A.F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Vice Marshal George Henry Morley, C.B.E.Q. H.S.F. R.C.S.L. R.C.P. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Peter Gerald Desmond Farr, B.E.D. F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Idris George Selvin Hemming, C.B.E. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Stanley Edwin Druce Mills, C.B.E. Royal Air Force. Civil Division Roland Lancelot Allen, Principal Assistant Solicitor, Office of H.M. Procurator General and Treasury Solicitor. Richard Douglas Barlas, O.B.E. Second Clerk Assistant and Clerk of Committees, House of Commons. Charles Young Carstairs, C.M.G. Under Secretary, Ministry of Public Building and Works. Cecil Charles Hall, Director, Warren Spring Laboratory, Ministry of Technology. William Francis Spencer Hawkins, J.P. Chief Master, Chancery Division of the Supreme Court of Judicature. John Joseph Benedict Hunt, First Commissioner, Civil Service Commission. Alexander Anthony Jarrett, Deputy Under-Secretary of State, Department of Employment and Productivity. John Andrew Jukes, Deputy Under-Secretary of State, Department of Economic Affairs. Herbert John Whitfield Lewis, Chief Architect, Ministry of Housing and Local Government. John Andrew Oliver, Second Secretary, Ministry of Development for Northern Ireland. Robert MacDonald Shaw, M.B., Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Ministry of Health. Charles Anthony Goodall Simpkins, C.B.E., Attached Ministry of Defence. Anthony Edward Walter Ward, C.B.E., Solicitor, Ministry of Social Security. James Murray Widdicombe, O.B.E., Director General of Supplies and Transport, Ministry of Defence. Geoffrey Masterman Wilson, C.M.G., Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Overseas Development. Order of St. Michael and St. George. Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Sir Geoffrey Wedgwood Harrison, K. CMG, K. CVO, Her Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Moscow. Sir Patrick Riley, K. CMG, O.B.E., Her Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Paris. Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Robin William John Hooper, C.M.G. D.S.O. D.F.C. Her Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Aden. Arthur James de la Mare, C.M.G. British High Commissioner, Singapore. Roderick Francis Gisbert Serrell, C.M.G. Her Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Tripoli. Eric Henry Wyndham White, lately Director General of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, Geneva. Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Professor Brian Gilmore Megraith, MBF, RCP, Dean, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. John Duncan Miller, lately head of the European Office International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Miss Cicely Delphine Williams, D.M.F., RCP, for services to pediatrics overseas. Colin Hamilton Allen, O.B.E., British Resident Commissioner, New Hebrides. John Ernest Feetwit Codrington, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Bahama Islands. Halsey Sparrow Colchester, O.B.E., Foreign Office. Thomas Anthony Keith Elliott, Political Advisor, Hong Kong. Ritu Penakanata Batu Ganalau D.SOO.BE Minister for Fijian Affairs and Local Government, Fiji, Edward Ferguson Given, lately Councillor Office of the Political Advisor to the Commander-in-Chief, Far East, Singapore, John Dunhennings, lately Head of British Office, Salisbury, Rhodesia, Kenneth Douglas Jameson, lately Councillor, Her Majesty's Embassy, Caracas, Arthur Terence Leckie, Foreign Office, James Livingston, O.B.E. Controller Establishments Division, British Council, Geoffrey Charles Peterson, lately Councillor, Her Majesty's Embassy, Athens, Henry Sidney Herbert Cleet Stanley, Foreign Office, Commonwealth Office, Robert Matheson Tesh, Councillor, Her Majesty's Embassy, Cairo, John Sutherland Thompson, M.B.E. Administrator, British Virgin Islands, Charles Douglas Wigan, D.FCA, FC, Councillor, Her Majesty's Embassy, Tehran, Edward Ude, M.B.E. Councillor and Head of Chancery, United Kingdom Mission to United Nations, New York, Australian States, State of New South Wales. The Honourable Abram Lander, Agent General for New South Wales in London. State of Victoria. Leonard Belcox, MD, B.S. Chairman, National Gallery Trustees, for services to the community. State of Western Australia. Alfred Charles Kerr Lewis, for services to local government and to the community. Royal Victorian Order, Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order Air Vice Marshal Sir Edward Hedley Fielden, K.C.V.O. C.B.D. F.C.A. F.C. Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order Rear Admiral Christopher Douglas Bonham Carter, C.B.C. V.O. Major General Cyril Harry Colquhoun, C.B.C. V.O.O. B.E. Colonel the Right Honourable Wycombe Stanley, Baron Cornwallis, K.B.E.M. C. Major General David Dornay, C.B.D. S.O. Major General Basil Oscar Paul Eugster, C.B.C. B.E.D. S.O.M. C. Jack Alexander Sutherland Harris, C.B. Major the Honourable Francis Michael Lee, C.V.O. Murray Lewis Tyrrell, C.V.O. C.B.E.J. P. Commander of the Royal Victorian Order Peter Dimmock, O.B.E. Commander John Lala, Metropolitan Police James Bernard Vivian Orr, M.V.O., Member of the Royal Victorian Order. At this time the two lowest classes of the Royal Victorian Order were Member and Member, both with post-nominal letters M.V.O. Member was renamed Lieutenant from the 1985 New Year Honours onwards. Fourth Class Lieutenant Commander Peter Richard Buckley, Royal Navy, Gerald Cobb, Geoffrey de Bella-Eek, Commander John Patrick Fisher, Royal Navy, Miss Anna Alicia Hamersley, M.V.O. William John Dennis Irving, Captain Peter Hugh Norman, 9th 12th Royal Lancers, Ronald Henry Phipps, Bryant Alfred Poulter, 5th Class Joseph Macri Fisher, Sidney Willis, Miss Sarah Jane Wood, Rupert Morwood, Royal Victorian Medal Divisional Sergeant Major Joseph Frederick Adkins, Her Majesty's Bodyguard of the Yeoman of the Guard, Jack Arthur Brewer, Chief Engine Room Artificer Bernard Joseph Clear, Albert Victor Augustus Dole, John Elcock, Arthur Henry Elkins, Miss Olive Jones, Alfred Ernest Long, George Mackay, Corporal of Horse Gilbert Edward Miller, Lifeguards, Medical Technician First Class Thomas John Richards, Leonard Horace Riches, James Edward Walton, Order of the British Empire, Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the British Empire Admiral Sir Nigel Henderson, K.C.B.O. B.E. Sir Gilbert Samuel Inglefield, T.D., Lord Mayor of London, Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire Isabel, Mrs. Graham Bryce, Chairman, Oxford Regional Hospital Board, and for services to social and personnel administration. Miss Kathleen Annie Raven, Chief Nursing Officer, Ministry of Health. Miss Muriel Ocadia Stewart, for services to education. Miss Cicely Veronica Wedgwood, C.B.E. Historian. Ethel May, Mrs. Wormold, J.P. late the Lord Mayor of Liverpool. Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire Vice Admiral Patrick Uniacke Bailey, CBD, SC, ***, Major General Wilfred John Potter, CBC, BE, late Royal Army Service Corps, Colonel Commandant, Royal Corps of Transport and Royal Army Ordnance Corps, Air Marshal Thomas William Piper, CBC, BEA, FC, Royal Air Force. John James Cowpith-Wade, C.M.G.O., BE, Financial Secretary, Hong Kong. Commander of the Order of the British Empire Professor David Talbot Rice, M.B.E. TD for services to the arts. Australian State of Victoria the Honourable Arthur Gordon Ryler, C.M.G.E.D., Deputy Premier and Chief Secretary. Order of the Companions of Honour the Right Honourable Patrick Christian Gordon Walker, M.P., Member of Parliament for Smethwick 1945–1964, and for Leighton since 1966. Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, Commonwealth Relations Office 1947–1950, Secretary of State for Commonwealth Relations 1950–1951, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs October 1964 – January 1965, Minister without portfolio 1967. Secretary of State for Education and Science 1967–1968. New Zealand. Knight Bachelor Desmond Henry Todd of Wellington, for services to commerce, particularly to the motor vehicle industry. Order of St. Michael and St. George Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Francis Leo Onion J.P. of Franktown Junction, for services to farming. Thomas K. Stewart Sidey of Dunedin, for services to the community, especially to local government. Order of the British Empire Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Hugh John Dyke Ackland J.P. of South Canterbury, for outstanding services to farming. Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Henry Nelson Dolly Moore, Clerk of the House of Representatives. John Lochiel Robson, Secretary for Justice. Gordon Drummond Stewart of Wellington, for services to commerce. Athol Humphrey Wells of Auckland, for services to commerce. Military Division Commodore Geoffrey Paul Sinton Vallant, Royal New Zealand Navy. Officer of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Rabbi Alexander Astor, Chief Minister of the Auckland Hebrew Congregation. Hilton James Barrett of Auckland, for services to the community, particularly to savings banks. Herbert Lorraine Boughton of Waihi Beach, for services to the electrical industry. Albert Ronald Guthrie MC of Christchurch, for services to local government. James Bryan Low MBCHB of Auckland, for services to medicine. Stuart Bell McLennan, Director, National Art Gallery, Wellington. Eric Charles Maris of Wellington, for services to commerce and public affairs. George Alfred Nichols of Gisborne, for services in the transport industry and aviation. Richard Alexander Nimon, Chairman, Hawke's Bay County Council. Miss Julia Nanny Wallace, Principal, Palmerston North Girls High School. Ian Rees Wills J.P. of Southland, for services to farming. Military Division Commander William James Lanyon Smith DSO, Royal New Zealand Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Matauru Pernunga MBE, Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment. Wing Commander Royden Matthews Jarrett, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Member of the Order of the British Empire for gallantry. John William Reed, of Nelson, for repeated acts of gallantry during rescue operations in circumstances of extreme danger. Civil Division. Miss Marjorie Henrietta Allen, Principal, Hohepa Homes for Handicapped Children, Napier. Robert Watson Brown, Mayor of Inglewood. James Dobson Campbell, of Rarotonga, Cook Islands, for services to scouting. William Ferguson Forrester, of Dunedin, for services to the community. George Herbert Fox JP, of Alexandra, for services to the community, especially to local government. Louise Casimir Gorman, of Wellington, for services in the prisons service. Richard John Gurian JP, Chairman, Danevirke County Council. Mrs. Minnie Johnson, of Christchurch, for services to kindergartens. Gerald Trevelyan, of Auckland, for services in the field of music. Mrs. Mona Margaret Livingston, of Waikanare, for services to the community. Miss Janet Ruby Macmillan, of Danevirke, for services to the community, particularly to the Red Cross Society. John Edmund Marnane, of Hamilton, for services to the community. Edwin Purcell Meechan JP, of Blenheim, for services to the community, particularly to local government. Miss Beatrice Victoria Palmer, Brigadier, Salvation Army, for services to nursing. Ivan Edgar Reddish, General Secretary, New Zealand Post Office Association. Mrs. Rui Haroe Marta Sage JP, of Hamilton, for services to the community, especially to women's and social service organizations. Robert Edwin Short JP, Mayor of Wairoa. Peter Wilfred Taps LMBCHB, of Rotorua, for services to medicine and to the Maori people. Lionel Gilbert Thompson JP, of Kaitaia, for services to the community. Henry George Warren JP, of Whakatane, for services to the community, especially to local government. Military Division Chaplain Roy Hay Mackenzie, Royal New Zealand Navy. Warrant Officer Class 2 Colin Russell Clements, Royal Regiment of New Zealand Artillery. Warrant Officer Class 1 William Philip Morgan, Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment. Captain Neil MacDonald Fraser, Officer, Royal New Zealand Army Medical Corps. Warrant Officer Class 1 Eric George Roll, Royal New Zealand Corps of Signals. Major Roy Thomas Victor Taylor, Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment. Squadron Leader John Bernard Noonan, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Warrant Officer George Robert MacDonald, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Companion of the Imperial Service Order Alistair Gordon Couston LRCP LRCSJP, Medical Superintendent, Seaview Hospital. British Empire Medal Civil Division Raymond Joseph Clark, Constable, New Zealand Police. Miss Pearl Howard Dawson, for services to women's sport in Auckland, particularly hockey and cricket. Miss Mildred Janet Newton Easdale, for services to the community, particularly as official visitor to the Nelson Hospital. Mrs. Catherine Helen Harris, for services to students in Dunedin. John Morris Henderson, Traffic Officer, for services to road safety in Dunedin. Miss Winifred Agnes Huggins, for services to the community of Auckland. Peter Frank McAlpine, for services to scouting. Mrs. Mary Elizabeth Miller, for services to the community of Northland. Noel Francis Pritchard, for services to local youth organizations in Rotorua. Anna Marori Piripi, Boatman Rigger, Marine Department. Miss Aileen Mary Stace, for services to the community of Eastbourne, particularly in the encouragement of wool handcrafts. Miss Corrie Welsh, lately Plunkett Nurse, Christchurch. Military Division Flight Sergeant Colin George McDowell, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Sergeant Patrick John Larter, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Sergeant Alexander Mackenzie, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Royal Red Cross. Member of the Royal Red Cross Miss Kathleen Mary Winks Amon, Royal New Zealand Nursing Corps. Air Force Cross Squadron Leader Colin William Rudd, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Flight Lieutenant Robert Thomas Reynolds Gilbert, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Queen's Police Medal Ernst Royden Trask, Superintendent, New Zealand Police Force.